Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Sony A7 III, and I've had this camera for just about a year now, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a long-term review of the Sony A7 III from my perspective on photos and on videos. So just so you know, I'm not paid or sponsored in any way to make these claims. This is all me. And to make it short and sweet for you, I love the Sony A7 III. So much so that I actually decided to purchase a second Sony A7 III, which I got just about a week ago. I'm filming this video now on my original Sony A7 III that I bought at the end of last August in 2018. And I bought this one as well for my wife because we've been getting a lot more into photography, and this way we can both do jobs like a wedding, and we can, basically have our images looking consistent across the board. So yeah, I've been very pleased with these so far. So we're gonna go ahead and run through just my initial thoughts on how this camera performs for videos as well as for photography, and why so many industry professionals are using these cameras. So I have to start off by saying that, when I first bought this camera a year ago, I wasn't a photographer, and it was, it was very intimidating to venture into a price point in a camera of the magnitude of the Sony A7 III. All the videos and everything I saw on YouTube were just so good praising this camera that in 2019, even right now, if you're watching this video, it's late August 2019, I still think this is the best, if not one of the best cameras that you can buy, especially for hybrid shooters. So if you're doing video and photography, or one or the other, it doesn't really matter. This camera is going to be able to do it all for you. That was probably the number one thing that when I bought the camera, I was mostly doing videos, and now it's kind of the opposite. I love doing photography with the Sony A7 III. When I first initially bought my A7 III, I bought only the Sony Zeiss 16-35 f4 lens, and up until about 3 months ago, that was like the only lens that I had. And then I started really going down a path of different lenses, and so now I have the 16-35, I have this Sony 85 millimeter, and I also bought the Tamron 28-75, which is on this camera, and that's what pretty much lives on this camera. It's great. So I think right off the bat, some of the main features that drew me towards the A7 III was just the amazing autofocus, the eye autofocus. So the ability to put a square around the face if you're photographing or taking a video of a person, it's going to be able to lock off their face and focus. So right now my camera is set in continuous autofocus mode, which basically just means it's continuously looking at the frame and trying to pick what to focus on. And it does such a good job, especially here, because I don't really have anything moving. So it's always going to be in focus on the subject's face if that's what you're filming. So that's one of the first things that drew me towards it. And of course, I didn't know what I was doing. So most of the time I would just put the camera in auto mode and just kind of go and let it do its thing. And I think if you're a beginner and you're watching this video, don't be intimidated, because this camera is scalable. So I think it's terrific. It's got modes on there, auto modes basically, that if you are a beginner or you just don't want to fiddle with it, you're just a hobbyist, you're going to be able to produce sharp images. I'll go ahead and pop some of the images that I've taken recently from this camera up on the screen. But I've worked my way into it. I shot basically either in like aperture priority mode or shutter priority mode for pretty much most of the time I've had this camera, up until, like I said, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I started going into full manual mode in my photos. And that gives you complete control over the camera, which I'm not going to dive too deep into. But again, this camera is going to be able to produce super sharp images. Some of the specs, you got a 24.2 megapixel full frame sensor on here. So that full frame sensor is amazing on the mirrorless camera. It'll allow you to shoot in 3:2 aspect ratio or 16:9. You do have IBIS, which is image stabilization, built into the camera. 5-axis, so it's not going to be just for video, which of course IBIS is more talked about in video, but believe it or not, when you're taking stills, especially if you're at a slower shutter speed, like in a lower light situation, you're going to have jittery movements, and having that in-body image stabilization is going to help out with, you're trying to take that picture, you're not going to get something blurry. So it's going to help out a lot. So it's just an important thing that this camera does have in there. So that's something that if you didn't know was already in there, it's important to know. And speaking of ISO, or low light performance, really, this camera is very well known for its low light performance. So again, you can go as low as 50 on your ISO and go all the way up to 204,800. I'm pretty sure that if you go up that high, you're probably not going to get a usable photograph. It does perform very, very well all the way up to about 10,000 ISO, which is really, that's where I set my limit on mine, is to go up to 10,000. And from there, I'm confident that I could literally take a picture at 10,000 ISO and still deliver that image to a paying customer. So, you know, you got a pretty wide range from 50 all the way up to 10,000, and that's going to allow you to work in just about any kind of environment that you can really think of. And of course, the camera can shoot in RAW. It's a good camera. Pretty much every good camera can. So what you can do is it also has 2 SD card slots, which is super important for paid for gigs, if you will. You know, if you're shooting a wedding and you only shoot to 1 card and something happens to that card, well, you just lost all those photos and you can't go back and shoot that gig over again. And so you pretty much have to give a refund. So what you can do is you can program your camera to either write to 1 card or the other card, or to both cards simultaneously. So if you're on a gig or you're at some kind of important event that you want to make sure, pop 2 SD cards in there, go into the menu, and you can set it to basically record simultaneously. A lot of times what I do is I have like my RAW photos go to slot 1, and then I have my videos record to slot 2. I pop 128 gig slot SD card into both slots, and I can take thousands of photos. And you know, I've gone to Disney and never been able to come close to filling up my cards yet. So that's the way that I personally like to do it, and it's super important for me, and I know that there are many professionals out there that also use that. So back to autofocus, this camera has arguably the best autofocus system on the market. Even today, you know, like the A6400 came out, which technically has this autofocus, but just kind of a little bit faster, but you're getting 693 phase detection autofocus points, which more or less just means it's using the majority of that sensor to have autofocus across the board there. And again, it's fast, it's snappy. You can slow it down if you'd like. You can increase it just a little bit. I think it comes pretty much standard right in the middle. That's what I've always shot mine on because I feel like that's what works well for me. You can also flip over to manual focus if you'd like. So, you know, you get the best of both worlds right there. And another important feature on this is going to be the battery. These batteries do last a long time. I have 4 batteries total, but, you know, I shot a wedding for the first time actually just a couple weeks ago, and I used the same battery for the whole time. I didn't turn my camera off. I was there for roughly 4.5 hours, and I did not turn the camera off. I just wore a strap and I wore it around and I kept it on and always ready to go. I just took photos, but I took roughly 2,000 photographs and I didn't kill the battery. I think I was down to like 25% or something like that at the end of the wedding. So yeah, these batteries are terrific. So with 4 of them, unless you're recording video, you're going to be set for quite a while. So if we go over to video stats, what I'm recording in right now is 4K, 24 frames per second. So what that just means is in 4K, you can only actually go up to 30 frames per second. So no slow motion in 4K, but 1080, you can flip it down to 1080 and you can go all the way up to 60 frames or 120 frames per second. So you're still gonna be in full HD on the slow-mo. You're just not gonna be able to record 4K slow-mo. That's okay for the most part because I'll just film in 4K and I have mine programmed on the dial up here. If I go to the dial and I flip over to memory recall number 2, then I'm going to be in 1080 120 frames per second. It'll upscale to 1080p to 4K, and it's good. It's not the best slow-mo on the market, but it's good and it does the job, and you know, I'm very happy with it. Another important video feature is there is a recording limit on the Sony A7 III. It'll go up to about 30 minutes, I think just under like 29 minutes and 59 seconds or something like that. So I've never run into that. I don't really record for 30 minutes on end, but if you are the type of person that may bother you, you might want to look somewhere else. Or the workaround is, you know, you'll hear the camera stop if you're recording, and then you just have to kind of just reach over and start it back up. So, you know, that's going to be your limit right at 30 minutes. That's the only annoying part if you're going to record longer videos. So you do have a hot shoe right up here that you can mount your microphone to, or like a wireless flash receiver. You can also mount a speed light up here if you want, which works great. I've used a couple of speed lights up there. You know, it's a good hot shoe. These little hot shoe covers you lose like crazy, but you can buy them on Amazon in bulk for cheap. Another good thing with these cameras is lens selection. There are tons of different lenses out there for them, so pretty much something for every application that you're looking for as far as videography and photography. And again, I'm pretty good with a 16 to 35, 28 to 75, and an 85. Those three for me have been able to do a really good job and help me produce some pretty good videos and photos as well, mostly lately photos. So like I said earlier, you know, I started up doing photography on the side. You know, I have my full-time job, but on the side I've been doing photography. So I'll show you, you can go on my website, cjrichphotos.com. You can see some of the work that I've done. All of this stuff was done on the Sony A7 III, so every photo that was taken. Most of the content on my YouTube channel here, again, all the way back to last September roughly, was done on the Sony A7 III, and I was a super beginner at that point. So here a year later, this camera has helped me grow just a ton, you know, with using it. And like I said, don't be scared or intimidated of it, because I know I was there a year ago, and you know, I wasn't already an industry professional, and now I really think that I am with the quality of the content that I've been able to just learn slowly over the course of the last year on using the camera. So you can grow with this camera for sure. Ton of good videos out there on YouTube. Feel free to go back and look at some of my videos that I've done. You can see some of the photography ones that I've done. And again, with the videos and pictures that I've posted here, you can see how good the quality is of this camera. And then another quick side note, not just for the Sony A7 III, but the Sony brand in general is, I feel like it's a very user-friendly brand. Yeah, the menu on the A7 III and all the Sonys, people knock on the menu, but maybe because I've been using it for the last year, it's a thorough menu. There's page after page, but for the most part, when you go through and you set up your camera the way that you want, you're not really diving into the menu. And now they've added the favorites tab, so you can actually add your favorites into that tab, so you can pretty much just live in that one tab now, and you can access the functions that you want to change very quickly. At first it's kind of confusing, but once you get into using it, it's actually not bad at all. And like I said, you're not diving into every page of every single one of those menus, but you can get different accessories, you know, like a little wireless remote to help control the shutter, so you can take videos and pictures of your family. If you want, you can set this up on a tripod and you can just click. You can start a picture, and you can just you can set it up on a self timer if you want. You can set it to take a burst of 3, 5, or 10 photos, and you know, you don't have to pay someone else to take really nice family photos of you. So it's kind of cool. You can buy tons of accessories. You can buy third-party batteries, screen protectors. I've been buying these SanDisk Extreme cards here. They're like $40 on Amazon now. They've come down so far in price, and I've never had an issue. You know, again, I'm recording in 4K, 24 frames per second at 100 megabits per second, and that's pretty much the limit of these cards. It's going to tap out right at 100 megabits per second, but again, I've never run into a problem of it not recording or anything like that, or transferring to my computer. So let me know what you guys thought of this video down below, if it was helpful. If you have any questions on the camera at all, feel free to leave those down below, because, you know, I'm not, you know, a Sony A7 III expert in every single thing, but I do know a lot about the Sony cameras. I've spent a lot of time researching and using these over the last year. So if you have any questions, leave those down below. I'll do my best to answer them as I come across them. And, you know, as always, we'll see you guys in the next video.